The Valen Empire had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. Their ships were as large as mountains. Their soldiers numbered in the billions. They had conquered 500 species across the galaxy, and not one had ever defeated them. The Valen believed they were the greatest beings in existence. They looked at other life forms the way humans looked at insects. When their probe discovered Earth, the Valen saw nothing special. A small blue planet with green lands and white clouds. The creatures living there had only just learned to leave their own world. Their ships were slow. Their weapons were weak. The Valen Emperor, a cold and ancient being named Tarak, laughed when he saw the reports. "Another species for the labor camps," he said to his advisors. "Send them the standard message. They have 30 days to surrender, or we will burn their world to ash." The message arrived on Earth on a quiet Tuesday morning. Every screen on the planet went dark for a moment. Then the alien face appeared. It was tall and gray, with 4 eyes and a mouth full of sharp teeth. It spoke in a voice that had been translated into every human language. "People of Earth, you have been discovered by the Valen Empire. Your planet now belongs to us. You will surrender all weapons. You will present your leaders for judgment. You will prepare your population for transport to work colonies. You have 30 planetary rotations to comply. If you refuse, your cities will be destroyed. Your people will be killed. Your world will be forgotten. This is not a negotiation. This is your only warning." The message ended. Silence fell across the world. In Seoul, Admiral Dawn sat in his office and watched the message 3 times. He was 62 years old. He had spent his entire life in the military, preparing for wars that never came. Now a war had come that no one could have imagined. His phone rang. It was the president. "What do we do?" the president asked. His voice was shaking. Dohan looked out his window at the city below. Millions of people were probably panicking right now. Families were holding each other. Children were crying. The world had just learned it was not alone in the universe, and the universe wanted to enslave them. "We fight," Dohan said. "We have no other choice." Fight? Against that? Did you see their ships? They have technology we cannot even understand. Then we will learn to understand it. Within hours, the leaders of every nation on Earth gathered for an emergency meeting. Old enemies sat across from each other. Countries that had been rivals for centuries now faced a common threat. The American president shook hands with the Russian leader. The Chinese premier embraced the Japanese prime minister. In the face of extinction, old hatred seemed small and foolish. They agreed on one thing: humanity would not surrender. They would rather die free than live as slaves. General Taiwu was placed in command of Earth's defense. He was 70 years old, a veteran of conflicts most people had forgotten. He had white hair and a scar across his face from a war fought decades ago. Young officers thought he was too old, too slow. They were wrong. Taiwu gathered his staff in an underground bunker beneath the mountains of Korea. The bunker had been built during the Cold War, designed to survive nuclear attacks. Now it would serve as the headquarters for humanity's resistance. "We cannot match their power," Taiwu told his officers. "Their ships are bigger. Their weapons are stronger. But power is not everything. We have something they do not expect." "What is that, sir?" asked a young lieutenant named Yuna. She was small, with sharp eyes and quick hands. She had been assigned to communications, but Taiwu had noticed her talent for finding patterns in data that others missed. "We have desperation," Taiwu said. "And desperate creatures are the most dangerous creatures in the universe." Yuna spent the next 3 days without sleep. She studied every piece of data from the alien transmission. The Valen had sent their message through Earth's communication networks, which meant they had connected to human systems. And when you connect to a system, you leave traces. On the fourth day, Yuna found something that made her heart stop. "Sir," she said to Taiwu, her voice barely a whisper, "their encryption. It is almost nothing. They did not bother to protect their data from us." Taiwu leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "I mean, they think we are stupid. They think we are animals who cannot understand technology. So they did not hide their secrets. I can see their fleet positions. I can see their communication codes. I can see their shield frequencies." For the first time in days, Taiwu smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a hunter who had just found his prey's weakness. "Show me everything," he said. While Yuna worked on the alien data, the rest of the world prepared for war. Factories that once made cars now made weapons. Scientists who had studied medicine now studied alien biology, looking for weaknesses. Computer experts who had designed games now designed viruses to attack alien systems. The Valen watched from their ships at the edge of the solar system. They expected to see chaos. They expected to see humans killing each other in panic. They expected to see governments collapse and populations beg for mercy. Instead, they saw silence. Earth stopped sending signals. Television stations went dark. Radio waves went quiet. To the Valen, it looked like the humans had given up, had crawled into holes to wait for death. Admiral Vectis, commander of the Valen Advance Fleet, reported to Emperor Torik, "The humans have gone silent, my Emperor. They are broken. They have accepted their fate." Torak nodded with satisfaction. "Good. Send the advance fleet to begin the harvest. 50 ships should be enough for such a weak species." "Yes, my Emperor." As the 50 Valen warships began their journey toward Earth, Yuna finished her analysis. She handed a datapad to Taiwu, her hands trembling with excitement. "Sir, I know how to beat them." Taiwu read the data. His old eyes went wide. "Are you certain?" "Yes, sir. They are arrogant. They never imagined anyone would fight back. Their systems are full of holes. We can break them." Taiwu stood up and looked at the map of Earth on the wall. 7 billion people were counting on him. 7 billion people who had chosen to fight instead of surrender. "Then let us show them," he said quietly. "What happens when you wake a sleeping giant?" The Valen had conquered 500 species. They had never lost a war. They believed they were invincible. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The 50 Valen warships entered the solar system like wolves walking into a field of sheep. Each ship was 3 kilometers long, covered in black armor that could stop nuclear weapons. Each ship carried 10,000 soldiers and enough firepower to destroy a continent. Admiral Vectis sat on his command throne and watched the blue planet grow larger on his screen. He had conquered 12 worlds in his career. This would be his 13th. An easy victory against primitive creatures who still fought with chemical explosions and metal bullets. "Scan the planet," Vectis ordered. "Find their military centers. We will destroy them first to show our power." The scan came back with strange results. "Admiral," his officer said, confusion in his voice, "we cannot find their military centers. There are structures underground, but they are shielded somehow. We cannot see inside." Vectis waved his hand. "It does not matter. Primitive shields cannot stop our weapons. Begin the bombardment of their largest cities. Show them the price of silence." The Valen ships moved into position above Earth. Their weapons began to charge, glowing red with terrible energy. Then the lights went out. One by one, the Valen ships went dark. Screens flickered and died. Engines stopped humming. Weapons powered down. In the cold silence of space, 50 of the most powerful warships in the galaxy became floating metal tombs. "What is happening?" Vectis screamed, grabbing his officer by the throat. "Report." "I do not know, Admiral. Our systems are failing. Something is inside our computers." On every screen that still worked, a message appeared in the Valen language. Simple words that would be remembered for centuries. "You should have sent a diplomat." Deep beneath the mountains of Korea, Yuna watched her screens with tired but triumphant eyes. The virus she had designed had worked perfectly. It had slipped through the Valen security like water through sand, spreading from ship to ship through their connected systems. Now their weapons were dead, their shields were down, and their engines were silent. General Taiwu stood beside her, speaking into a radio. "All units, begin Operation Wake Up. Repeat, begin Operation Wake Up." Across the world, hidden spacecraft rose from underground bunkers. They were small and ugly compared to the Valen ships. They had been built in secret over the past 3 weeks, using every piece of technology humanity could gather. They were not meant to fight. They were meant to capture. Captain Sung-ho led the first team. He was 35 years old, a former helicopter pilot who had volunteered for a mission everyone thought was suicide. His small ship approached the largest Valen warship, the one where Admiral Vectis commanded. "Remember," Taiwu's voice crackled in his ear, "we want them alive. Dead aliens cannot tell us their secrets." Sung-ho smiled grimly. "Understood, sir. Beginning boarding operation." The next 12 hours were chaos. Human soldiers in simple spacesuits cut their way into Valen ships. The aliens, their weapons disabled, fought with their claws and teeth. They were bigger than humans. They were stronger than humans. But humans had something the Valen had forgotten: the madness of creatures with nothing to lose. Private Mireille was part of the team that captured the engine room of Vectis' ship. She was 28 years old, a former computer engineer who had never fired a gun before the invasion was announced. Now she had killed 6 Valen soldiers with her own hands. As she secured the engine room, she plugged her tablet into the alien computer system. Her fingers moved fast, copying everything she could find. Ship designs, star maps, the locations of Valen bases across the galaxy, and something else, something that made her stop breathing for a moment. "General," she whispered into her radio, "I found their slave records. They have lists of every species they have conquered. Hundreds of them. Billions of beings in their labor camps." There was a long silence on the radio. "Copy everything," Taiwu finally said. "Every single piece of data. Those people are our future allies." Admiral Vectis was captured in his command room. He had killed 3 human soldiers before they brought him down with electric weapons. When he woke up, he was in chains, surrounded by the primitive creatures he had planned to enslave. A human female stood before him. She was small, with black hair and eyes that held no fear. Vectis later learned her name was Yuna. "I am going to ask you questions," Yuna said in broken Valen language. She had learned it in 3 weeks from intercepted communications. "You are going to answer. If you lie, I will know. If you refuse, I will be very patient. We have time. Your empire does not know what happened here yet. By the time they find out, we will know everything." Vectis laughed. "You think you have won? You have captured 50 ships. The empire has 5 million. You are insects. You are nothing." Yuna smiled. It was not a kind smile. "We were insects," she agreed. "Insects that you ignored. Insects that you underestimated. Now we have your ships. We have your codes. We have your star maps. And soon, we will have your allies." "Allies? What allies?" "No species has ever allied with prey." "Not yet," Yuna said. "But there are 500 species suffering under your empire. 500 species waiting for someone to show them that the Valen can bleed. We are going to show them. The news reached Emperor Torak 3 days later. He read the report in silence. 50 ships lost. Admiral Vectis captured. The primitive humans had somehow disabled Valan technology and boarded the warships. Impossible. It was impossible. How? He demanded. How did animals do this? His advisor, an old Valan named Sarek, who had served 3 emperors, chose his words carefully. They used our own systems against us, my emperor. We broadcast our signals openly because we believe no primitive species could decode them. We were wrong. They learned our language. They learned our codes. They found weaknesses we did not know existed. Then we will send more ships. 1,000 ships. 10,000 ships. Yes, my emperor. But I advise caution. These humans are not like other species we have conquered. They do not behave normally. They should have surrendered. They should have begged for mercy. Instead, they went silent, learned our secrets, and attacked. This is not the behavior of prey. This is the behavior of predators who are pretending to be prey. Torak slammed his fist on his throne. I do not care what they pretend to be. Send the Grand Fleet. Every ship we can spare. I want that planet burned to glass. As you command, my emperor. As the Valan Empire prepared its response, humanity prepared as well. Dr. Jiwoo, a brilliant physicist from Bizan, worked day and night to understand the captured alien technology. She did not sleep. She barely ate. Her team took apart Valan weapons piece by piece, learning how they worked, finding ways to copy them. Their shields operate on quantum frequencies, she explained to Tai Wu during one of their midnight meetings. If we know the frequency, we can match it. Then their shields become useless. How long until we can build our own shields? Jiwoo pushed her glasses up her nose. Months, maybe years. But we do not need to build our own shields. We just need to break theirs. In the captured Valan ships, Sergeant Yunji led a different kind of mission. She was a linguist, someone who studied languages. Now she was trying to talk to the captured Valan soldiers. Not to interrogate them, to understand them. Most of the prisoners refused to speak. They saw humans as vermin, creatures beneath conversation. But one young Valan soldier was different. His name was Tovin, and he had been forced into the military against his will. Why do you not kill us? Tovin asked one day. We came to enslave you. We would have killed your children. Why do you show mercy? Yunji thought about the question for a long time. Because, she finally said, we do not want to become like you. We will fight you. We will defeat you. But we will not lose ourselves in the process. That is what makes us different. Tovin was silent for a long time. Then he began to talk. He told Yunji about the Valan Empire, about the species they had crushed, about the rebellion that was always simmering beneath the surface, waiting for a spark. Humanity would become that spark. The Grand Fleet was coming. 5,000 ships. Enough firepower to crack the Earth in half. The greatest military force the galaxy had ever seen. But humanity was no longer afraid. They had tasted victory. They had seen that gods could bleed. And they were ready to make them bleed again. The Empire waged war on humanity. Part 3, the Grand Fleet arrived like a storm of metal and fire. 5,000 Valan warships filled the sky above Earth, blocking out the stars. Each ship was a fortress. Each ship carried death enough for millions. Admiral Rannoch, the new commander, stood on his bridge and looked at the small blue planet below. This is what defeated Vectis? He said with disgust. This tiny world? These primitive apes? The Emperor was right to execute him for his failure. Sir, his officer reported, we are receiving a transmission from the planet. They wish to speak. Rannoch laughed. Let them beg. I want to hear their fear." The screen flickered, and a human face appeared. It was a woman with gray hair and calm eyes. Her name was Haniel, and she had been chosen by every nation on Earth to speak for humanity. She was not a soldier. She was not a scientist. She was a teacher who had spent her life helping children learn. Now she would teach the galaxy a lesson. "I am Ambassador Haniel," she said in the Valan language. Months of study had made her fluent. "I speak for Earth. I speak for humanity." "You speak for insects," Rannoch replied. "Your time for speaking is over. Your time for dying has begun. Before you attack, I want you to understand something. We did not want this war. We did not ask for it. We were living our lives, raising our children, dreaming our dreams. Then you came. You threatened us. You tried to enslave us. You left us no choice. Choice." Rannoch leaned forward. "What choice did prey have? We are not prey." Haniel's voice was steady as stone. "We will not meet you strength against strength. We will not fight the way you expect. We will fight like humans. And you will learn that the most dangerous creature in the universe is not the strongest. It is the one that refuses to give up." Rannoch cut the transmission and ordered the attack. The battle that followed became legend across 1,000 worlds. The Valan expected the humans to form defensive lines, the way every other species had done. Instead, human ships scattered like seeds in the wind. Small, fast, impossible to target. They darted between the massive Valan warships, striking at weak points that Yuna's intelligence teams had identified. Captain Sung-Ho led a squadron of 12 ships against a Valan carrier 10 times their size. His pilots were not trained soldiers. They were taxi drivers and bus drivers and delivery workers who had learned to fly in 3 months of desperate training. "Stay close," Sung-Ho commanded. "Hit their engine ports. If you run out of ammunition, ram them. Die with your finger on the trigger." They destroyed the carrier. 8 of the 12 pilots did not survive. Sung-Ho watched his friends explode into fire and kept fighting. There was no time for grief. Grief was for later. Grief was for the living. On the ground, the Valan landed troops to occupy major cities. They expected terrified civilians hiding in their homes. Instead, they found every building a fortress, every street a trap, every civilian a fighter. Private Myray led a resistance cell in the ruins of Seoul. She had taught herself to build bombs from kitchen chemicals. She had taught herself to hack Valan communication devices. She had taught herself to kill without making a sound. "They think cities are easy to hold," she told her team of 50 fighters. "They have never fought humans in a city. We will show them their mistake." The Valan soldiers marched through the streets in their shining armor. They were 8 feet tall. They had weapons that could melt steel. They were afraid of nothing. Then the buildings began to explode. Bombs hidden in walls. Snipers firing from windows. Traps made of wire and broken glass. The Valan fell one by one, killed by creatures they considered vermin. When they captured human fighters, they executed them in the streets, hoping to spread fear. Instead, the executions were recorded and broadcast across the galaxy. Yunji had done her work well. During her conversations with the prisoner Tovin, she had learned the communication frequencies of the slave species. Now human hackers sent the videos everywhere. To the mining colonies of the Kreth, to the factory worlds of the Morani, to every corner of the Valan Empire, where conquered species labored under the whip. The videos showed humans fighting, dying, refusing to surrender. They showed small creatures with soft skin standing against the might of the greatest empire in history. And for the first time in 12,000 years, the slaves began to hope. The Kreth were the first to rebel. They were insect-like creatures who had been conquered 3,000 years ago. They worked in the deep mines of 100 worlds, digging out the metals that built Valen ships. When they saw the videos from Earth, something changed inside them. If the soft ones can fight, their leader said, so can we. They sabotaged the mines. They killed their overseers. They sent a message to Earth. We are with you. The Morani followed. Then the Selvik. Then species whose names humans had never heard. Across the Valen Empire, fires began to burn. Not the fires of Valen weapons, but the fires of rebellion. Emperor Torek received the reports with growing horror. His empire was crumbling. His fleet was struggling against a single primitive world. His slaves were rising up. Everything he had built was falling apart. How is this possible? He screamed at his advisors. We are the masters of the galaxy. We are invincible. Old Sarek spoke carefully. My emperor, we were invincible because no one believed they could fight us. The humans have shown that belief was wrong. Now every slave, every conquered species, every being we have crushed is looking at Earth and thinking, if they can fight, so can I. Then destroy Earth. Burn it! Kill every human! Remove the example. We are trying, my emperor. But the humans do not fight like we expected. They do not surrender when they are losing. They do not break when we kill their leaders. When we corner them, they do not beg for mercy. They attack. They sacrifice themselves to hurt us. They are not afraid to die. Everyone is afraid to die. Sarek shook his head slowly. No, my emperor. Not everyone. Not the humans. That is why they are winning. In orbit above Earth, the battle raged on. Admiral Rannoch had lost 2,000 ships. His fleet was still larger than anything humanity could match, but his soldiers were afraid now. They had never fought an enemy like this. An enemy that celebrated death. An enemy that turned every loss into a recruitment video for rebellion. Rannoch finally managed to capture the moon. It was a hollow victory. The humans had evacuated everyone and left behind booby traps that killed 1,000 Valen soldiers. But the moon gave Rannoch something important, a position from which to bombard Earth directly. He ordered his ships to begin the attack. Dr. Jiwoo watched the bombardment from her bunker. The shield she had helped design held against most of the attacks, but some got through. Cities burned. Millions died. We cannot keep this up, Taiwu said. His face was gray with exhaustion. He had not slept in days. They have too many ships. Too many weapons. We do not need to win, Jiwoo replied. We just need to survive long enough for the rebellions to spread. The empire is dying. Every day we hold out, 3 more species rise up. Every day we fight. The Valen grow weaker. But how many more humans will die? Jiwoo was silent for a long moment. She thought of her family, killed in the first bombardment. She thought of her students, now fighting in the streets of Bizen. She thought of every person on Earth who had given their life for this cause. As many as it takes, she said quietly. That is what the Valen do not understand. We are not fighting for victory. We are fighting for each other, for our children, for every species they have ever enslaved. We will fight until there is no one left to fight. And even then, we will find a way. Taiwu looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Then we keep fighting. Across the galaxy, the word spread. The humans were still fighting. The humans were still dying. The humans were still refusing to give up. And slowly, surely, the Valen Empire began to break apart. 6 months had passed since the Grand Fleet arrived. Earth was scarred but unbroken. The Valen controlled the sky and the moon, but they could not control the ground. Every city they occupied became a nightmare. Every soldier they sent down never came back. Admiral Dohan commanded the resistance from a bunker deep, beneath the mountains of Korea. He had not seen the sun in 4 months. His hair had turned white. His hand shook when he held his coffee cup. But his mind was still sharp, and his will was still iron. "Report," he said to Una, who had become his right hand. "The Valen lost another 300 soldiers in Seoul last night. Moray's cell destroyed their supply depot in Bizon. Dr. Jiwoo has finished the new shield generators, and we have deployed them to protect our remaining power plants." Una paused, and we received another message from the Kreth. Dohan leaned forward. "What did they say?" Una smiled. It was the first time she had smiled in weeks. "They have taken their home world." 50 million Kreth rose up at once. The Valen garrison was overwhelmed in 3 days. "They are asking for our tactical files." "Send them everything." "Communications codes. Attack patterns. Bomb-making instructions. Everything we know about fighting the Valen." "Already done, sir." Across the galaxy, rebellion was spreading like wildfire. The videos from Earth had shown the conquered species something they had never seen before. Someone fighting back. Someone winning. Someone proving that the Valen were not gods. The Morani seized control of 3 factory worlds and stopped producing weapons for the Empire. The Selvik assassinated their planetary governor and declared independence. A species called the Turek, small furry creatures who had been conquered just 50 years ago, hijacked a Valen warship and flew it into the Empire's largest fuel depot. Emperor Torak watched his empire crumble and felt a fear he had never known. He had ruled for 200 years. He had crushed 100 rebellions. But those rebellions had been small, isolated, easy to contain. This was different. This was everywhere. This was an infection spreading through the body of his empire, killing it cell by cell. "Destroy Earth," he ordered. "I do not care about the cost. I do not care about the losses. Destroy that planet and kill every human. Remove the symbol that is inspiring these uprisings." Admiral Rannoch received the order and began planning the final assault. He would gather every ship he could spare. He would bombard Earth until the oceans boiled and the atmosphere burned away. He would turn the planet into a dead rock floating in space. But the humans had spies now. Tovin, the Valen prisoner who had become Yunji's friend, had told them everything about the Empire's communication systems. Human hackers had infiltrated those systems and were reading every message. "They are planning something big," Una reported to Dawn. "Rannoch is gathering ships from across the sector. 3,000 more warships are on their way." "When will they arrive?" 2 weeks. Dawn closed his eyes. 2 weeks. 14 days to prepare for the end of the world. Then we have 14 days to show them what we are made of. Captain Sung-ho led the mission to disrupt the reinforcements. His squadron of 40 ships jumped into enemy territory, attacking supply lines and communication stations. It was a suicide mission. Everyone knew it. Sung-ho went anyway. "You do not have to do this," Doan had told him before he left. "We can find another way." Sung-ho had shaken his head. "There is no other way. Someone has to slow them down. Someone has to buy you time. I would rather die fighting than die hiding." His squadron fought for 3 days before they were finally cornered by a Valen battle group. Sung-ho was captured along with 12 survivors. Admiral Rannoch was pleased. He had a plan for these prisoners. "We will broadcast their execution," Rannoch told his officers. "We will show the galaxy what happens to those who resist. We will break the spirit of these humans once and for all." The execution was scheduled for the following day. Cameras were set up. Transmitters were prepared. The broadcast would reach every corner of the galaxy. Sung-ho and his soldiers were brought before the cameras in chains. They were bruised and bloody. They had been tortured for information and had given nothing. Now they stood in a row, waiting to die. Rannoch stepped forward, his speech prepared. "People of Earth, people of the galaxy, look at your heroes now. Look at how weak they are. Look at how small. This is the fate of all who resist the Valen Empire. This is the fate that awaits your planet. Surrender now, and your death will be quick. Resist, and you will suffer like these insects suffered. He turned to Sung-Ho. Any last words, human? Sung-Ho raised his head. His face was swollen. One eye was closed shut, but his voice was clear and strong. My people do not quit, he said. We do not know how. You can kill us. You can burn our world, but you cannot break us. For every one of us you kill, 10 more will rise. 100 more. 1,000 more. We are not fighting for land. We are not fighting for power. We are fighting for each other. And that is something you will never understand. Rannoch laughed. Kill him. The blade fell. Sung-Ho died. The broadcast ended. Rannoch expected fear. He expected despair. He expected Earth to finally surrender. Instead, within 1 hour, 5 more species declared rebellion. The Kreth sent a message. His name was Sung-Ho. We will not forget. The Morani sent a message. His name was Sung-Ho. We will avenge him. The Selvik sent a message. His name was Sung-Ho. His death will not be in vain. Across the galaxy, slaves who had accepted their fate for centuries suddenly found their courage. They saw a small creature from a small planet, facing death without fear, and they thought, if he can do it, so can I. Memira watched the broadcast from her hiding place in the ruins of Seoul. She had known Sung-Ho. He had taught her how to shoot. He had made her laugh during the darkest days of the siege. Now he was dead, and she felt something cold settle into her heart. Find me their central banking systems, she told her team. Every Valen credit. Every account. Every transaction. What are you going to do? Moray's eyes were hard as steel. I am going to bankrupt an empire. It took her 3 weeks. 3 weeks of no sleep, no food, no rest. 3 weeks of crawling through alien computer systems, leaving traps and viruses everywhere she went. When she was done, 30% of the Valen Empire's wealth simply vanished. Banks collapsed. Markets crashed. The economic chaos spread faster than any military campaign could have. Emperor Torak finally understood. This was not a war. This was an awakening. Humanity had not just fought back. They had shown the galaxy that fighting back was possible. And now the galaxy was on fire. Where are these humans? He demanded of old Sarek. Sarek looked at his emperor with ancient, tired eyes. He had lived long enough to see the rise of the Valen Empire. Now he was living long enough to see its fall. They are what we used to be, my emperor, he said quietly. Before we forgot how to dream. Before we forgot how to hope. They are the reminder of what we lost when we became conquerors instead of creators. I do not understand. No, my emperor. That is why we are losing. On Earth, Dohun received reports of the chaos spreading through the empire. He allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Then he returned to planning the final battle. The reinforcements were almost there. 3,000 ships, plus Rannoch's surviving fleet. More firepower than any force in galactic history. But humanity was not alone anymore. Ships from the Kreth, the Morani, the Selvik, and a dozen other species were making their way to Earth. Not enough to win, but enough to fight. We are going to die, Yuna said one night, standing beside Doan in the command center. Probably, Doan agreed. Are you afraid? Dohan thought about the question. He thought about his family, killed in the first attack. He thought about Sung-Ho, dying in chains. He thought about every human who had given their life for this cause. No, he said finally. I am not afraid. I am proud. We were nobody. We were insects. And we changed the galaxy. Whatever happens tomorrow They will never forget us. Yuna nodded. Then she went back to work, preparing for the battle that would decide the fate of humanity. The final fight was coming. And win or lose, humans would face it standing up. 1 year. 1 year since the Valen first appeared in Earth's sky. 1 year since humanity faced extinction. 1 year of blood and fire and impossible courage. Admiral Rannoch gathered his final fleet in orbit above the moon. 1,500 warships remained from the Grand Fleet. 3,000 reinforcements had arrived from across the crumbling empire. Together, they formed the largest military force ever assembled for a single attack. Today we end this, Rannoch told his officers. Today we burn Earth. Today we kill every last human and erase them from the memory of the galaxy. On Earth, General Taiwu stood in the command center, looking at a holographic map of the enemy fleet. Beside him stood Yuna, Dr. Jiwoo, and a dozen other officers who had survived a year of hell. How many ships do we have? Taiwo asked. 200, Yuna replied. Plus another 100 from our allies. 300 ships against 4,500. Volunteers? Every ship is crewed by volunteers. People who know they will not survive. People who want to fight anyway. Taiwo nodded slowly. He was 71 years old now. A year of war had aged him another 20 years. But his back was straight, and his eyes were clear. Then let us give them a fight worth dying for. Ambassador Haniel broadcast one final message to the galaxy. She stood in front of a camera, looking directly into the lens, speaking to every species that could hear her. This may be our last day. The Valen are coming to destroy us. We do not have enough ships. We do not have enough weapons. We do not have enough soldiers. But we have something they will never have. We have each other. We have hope. We have the knowledge that we stood up when no one else would. Whatever happens today, remember us. Remember that a small species on a small planet looked at the greatest empire in history and said, "No, we will not bow. We will not break. We will not surrender. And if we fall, let our fall be a light that guides others to freedom." The broadcast ended. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched and wept. The battle began at dawn, Earth time. Human ships rose from the surface like a swarm of fireflies. They were small and fragile compared to the Valen warships. They did not form neat formations. They did not follow traditional tactics. They flew like madmen, weaving between enemy ships, striking at weak points, sacrificing themselves to create openings for their comrades. Taiwu commanded from the flagship, an old cargo ship that had been converted into a mobile command center. It had no weapons. It had minimal shields. But it had the best communication system humanity could build, and Taiwu used it to coordinate the chaos. Squadron 7, target that carrier's engine pods. Squadron 12, cover their retreat. All medical ships, pull back to the secondary line. Eunice stood beside him, feeding him information from a dozen screens. Enemy flagship is moving forward. I think Rannoch wants to finish this personally. Good. Let him come. The closer he gets, the easier he is to hurt. Dr. Jiwoo had one last surprise. She had spent the past month building a weapon unlike anything humans had made before. It used principles she had learned from Valen technology, combined with human creativity. It was small enough to fit on a single ship. It was powerful enough to destroy a flagship. The problem was the delivery. Someone would have to fly the weapon directly into Rannoch's ship and detonate it manually. The pilot would not survive. "I will do it," Yoonji said when she heard the plan. Jiwoo shook her head. "You are too valuable. You speak their language. You understand their culture. We need you for after." "After?" Yoonji laughed bitterly. "There may not be an after. There will be. If we win or lose, the rebellion will continue. The species we have inspired will keep fighting. Someone needs to help them work together. Someone who can bridge the gap between humans and aliens. That someone is you. Yoonji wanted to argue, but she knew Ji-woo was right. In the end, a young pilot named Geo volunteered. She was 23 years old. She had learned to fly 6 months ago. She had lost her entire family in the first bombardment. "I have nothing left," she told Taiwu. "Let me give what I have to others." Taiwu looked at her for a long moment. She reminded him of his daughter, killed in the war's first days. "Thank you," he said quietly. "Your name will be remembered." Geo smiled. "I know." The battle raged for hours. Human ships fell by the dozens, but they took Valen ships with them. Every pilot knew they were going to die. Every pilot flew like they had nothing to lose. They rammed enemy vessels. They flew into weapon ports and detonated their reactors. They turned themselves into missiles. The Kreth fleet arrived at the battle's third hour. 100 ships, small but fierce. They dove into the Valen formation, screaming war cries in their clicking language. The Marani arrived at the 5th hour. 80 ships, built for manufacturing, not for war. They did not care. They flew anyway. Other species came. The Selvik, the Turek, species whose names humans did not know. They came because Earth had shown them something they had forgotten. They came because they would rather die free than live as slaves. Admiral Rannoch watched his fleet shrink with growing rage. This should have been easy. This should have been over in hours. Instead, his ships were burning, his soldiers were dying, and these primitive creatures were still fighting. "Push forward," he commanded. "Destroy their flagship. Kill their general." End this. His command ship moved through the battle like a predator through a herd of prey. It was the largest ship in the fleet, bristling with weapons, surrounded by escort vessels. Nothing could stop it. Then Geo appeared. Her ship was tiny, barely visible among the chaos of battle. She flew with skill she did not know she had, dodging enemy fire, weaving through debris. Her hands were steady on the controls. Her heart was calm. She thought about her family. Her mother, who had taught her to cook. Her father, who had taught her to laugh. Her little brother, who had wanted to be an astronaut. "I am coming home," she whispered. Her ship entered the command vessel's shield perimeter. Alarms screamed. Weapons turned toward her. But she was already inside, already accelerating toward the ship's core. Yoonji had given her one more gift, a message to broadcast in perfect. Valen. Geo activated it as she made her final approach. "We forgive you," the message said, echoing through Rannoch's bridge. "We hope you learn from this." Rannoch heard the words. He did not understand them. He never would. The weapon detonated. The explosion was visible from Earth. A new star appeared in the sky for a brief moment, brighter than anything humans had ever seen. When it faded, Renault's flagship was gone, scattered into atoms, erased from existence. The Valen fleet froze. Their commander was dead. Their communications were in chaos. They did not know what to do. Taiwu did. "All ships, attack. Push them back. Today we end this war." The final push lasted 3 hours. Without Rannoch's leadership, the Valen fleet fell apart. Ships surrendered. Ships fled. Ships turned on each other as old grudges erupted in the chaos. When the sun set over Earth that day, the sky was clear of enemy ships for the first time in a year. 5 years later, Admiral Doan stood on the rebuilt moon. He was old now, retired from military service. His hair was white. His hands trembled, but his eyes were still sharp. Beside him stood Yuna. She was an admiral now, commanding humanity's first true exploration fleet. They had come to visit the memorial. The wall stretched for kilometers. Names carved in black stone. Humans and aliens who had died in the war. Sung-Ho's name was there. Ji-Hyu's name was there. Millions of names, each one a life given for freedom. We won, Do-hun said quietly. I still cannot believe we won. We did not win, Yuna replied. Everyone won. Every species that stood with us. Every slave who rose up. Everyone who refused to accept that empires last forever. The Valen Empire was gone now. It had fractured into dozens of smaller states. Some had embraced peace. Some were still dangerous. But the myth of Valen invincibility had died forever on the day Ji-Hyo flew into Rannoch's ship. Ambassador Hanyul now led the Galactic Coalition, an alliance of freed species. Humans were not rulers. They were partners, teachers, friends. Do you ever regret it? Yuna asked. All the death? All the sacrifice? Da-Han was silent for a long moment. He thought about everyone they had lost. Friends, family, an entire generation sacrificed on the altar of survival. No, he said finally. I regret the necessity of it. I wish the Valen had chosen peace. But I do not regret fighting. I do not regret standing up. We showed the galaxy that there is always hope. Even against impossible odds. Even when everything says you should surrender. There is always hope. They stood in silence, watching Earth rise over the lunar horizon. Blue and green and alive. The Empire had waged war on humanity. They had expected easy conquest. They had expected quick surrender. They had expected another species to add to their collection of slaves. Instead, they got the one thing no one could have foreseen. They got a species that refused to quit. A species that turned defeat into inspiration. A species that lit a fire that burned across the galaxy. They got hope. And hope, in the end, was stronger than any fleet. The war was over. A new age had begun. And somewhere, in the stars they had finally claimed as their own, humanity looked toward the future and smiled. They had earned it.